You're watching Word Alive Bible Study at Word Tabernacle Church.
I need a word, life-changing word.
A place of relevant ministry where relationships are built, needs are met, purpose is fulfilled, and God is enjoyed. Join us now as we get stronger, grow deeper, and go higher.
Stronger, deeper, and higher every day. We need a word.
Ephesians chapter 5, reflections in our conduct. And as I teach, I'm going to walk us through gently some of this because it can really be harsh. It can feel harsh. Paul is writing to the church at Ephesus. If you go, as a matter of fact, I think it's important that we see this, chapter 1 and verse 1. He opens up in his greeting to the church at Ephesus, and he says, he's identifying himself, but then he says, to the saints who are in Ephesus and are faithful in Christ Jesus. Let me tell you why that really matters, because sometimes we forget our audience. Because he's writing, like to read this, it's almost like he's writing to heathens. Because he's telling them stuff that you're like, really? You talking to the faithful believers. I'm going to tell you why this matters, because I think sometimes when we see one another struggle in our humanity, our assumption is that, oh, you're in church, but you're not faithful. Your name is on the roll, but you don't really read your Bible. You have a title, but you're not really who you claim you are. Paul is writing to faithful followers of Jesus. And these faithful followers of Jesus are wrapped in flesh. They have humanity issues. 100% of us have humanity issues. Different ones, but humanity issues. He says, so I want to help correct it. And I can't correct it if we don't deal with it, if we don't confront it, right? So he confronts us now in chapter 5. And interestingly enough, he says, what I want you to keep at the forefront of all of this is if you're losing your way, just do what you see in Jesus. Like, to the best of your ability, if you just do that while you're figuring it out, it's going to help. So we started talking about this issue of taking a moment of looking in the mirror, reflecting on my own conduct. So I'm, not a whole bunch of time talking about the toothpick in your eye. I'm dealing with the bat in my head, right? So I'm going to reflect on my conduct. That's what this Bible study is about. How do we do that? So he begins to lay out the standards that we must have. And that's what we spent all of last week talking about. We spent last week talking about the standards of our conduct, right? I'm going to have two more big areas to teach on today, but we primarily said our standards are in the area of the light we cast and the love we share. And then part of that light is really about my character. And we talked about character last week. But then he says now in verse 11, that's where I want you to meet me. Chapter 5, verse 11. He says, and I got to tell y'all, man, this is very convicting for me. And I think it might be convicting for some of you. He says, verse 11, y'all. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Now, let me tell you, so put down the word command, jot down the word command, because what he does is he gives me a command now. He goes further than I would have gone. So that means God is going further than I would have gone. Most of us live in the space of I'm not participating. I'm going to get a handful of amens in a second. He says, nope, that's not far enough. Not only do I not want you participating, I want you exposing it. Now, this is a whole nother situation now. Yes. Because we oftentimes don't feel like we have this biblical expectation on us, this biblical requirement on us as believers to expose things. We don't recognize, and this is not in your questions, so jot this one down, because I'm loving these small groups that their whole group is just around talking about Bible study, talking about Sunday sermon, and unpacking the questions. So I'm going to always add more questions. This is one of the ones I want us talking about in our small groups at our kitchen tables. Is silence complicity? That's what I want us to process for a moment. Because let's be totally honest. There are going to be moments where I just don't see it the way you see it, right? There are going to be moments where just because I'm not speaking to it, sometimes I'm just tired of speaking to it, right? So what I want us to process for a moment is my silence on something me really being complicit with what I'm seeing? So when I'm in the midst, verse 11, when I'm in the midst of unfruitful works of darkness, what a great expression. When I'm in the midst of experiencing something, I'm like, how does that help anybody? How is that life-giving to anybody? When I'm in the midst of that dialogue, that conversation, that interaction, why is it that maybe I don't participate in the conversation, but I also don't tell you you're wrong? I don't say anything bad about the person, but I also don't say anything good. Martin Luther King, he said, in the end, we're not going to remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And so in our small groups this week, let's talk about, is my silence complicity? I prayed about something. I'm about to release an op-ed, and I was really struggling about if I was going to write anything, say anything. And then here comes this Bible study. But our lieutenant governor called the lesbian community filth. I'm just old school Christian guy, and I just don't believe God thinks of people as filth. Amen. And I got to thinking, I was like, I'm not gay, so I'll just be quiet. It's not my community, it's not me. And then I read this, that we have a responsibility as believers, that we are willing to go beyond the negative realm of doing no harm. That it requires, this is literally in placing on us a moral and biblical responsibility to challenge wrong. That's a whole nother posture. So it's implying now a biblical, moral, spiritual responsibility to help protect what's right, and help protect other people. I think sometimes we just want to be in the in crowd. So, I like the fact that you come to my office. I like the fact that you come to my cubicle. I like the fact that you text me, and even though you're wrong, I'm not going to say anything. But Paul puts a different requirement on us. So let me, and I'm deliberately just taking my time with this because I want this thing to live for us. So this is the question for me. What I want us processing in our small groups, in our own mirrors, is, are you by my side only when we're standing next to each other? Or are you really by my side when we're not in the same room? And if I'm silent, ask yourself why. If I'm silent, why? What is it about me that makes me scared or unwilling to expose the darkness? That's the issue he raises. This puts a whole heap of responsibility on the church. You're talking about speaking truth to power. That's it right here. So he gives us a command to do this, y'all. And so that's the first thing I want us thinking about in terms of our standard. Am I willing to do what he says here in verse 11? Let me say the other thing he does around this standard of our character. We talked about the character of our light, and now of our love, and then the command he gives us, but then I think he gives us a commission. And as I look at verses 12 through 14, and I think it's very important for us to think about this, he says it's shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. So he's like, so grab what he's saying. What they talking about is so unworthy of your repetition. I get that. But if you don't deal with it, it's going to keep happening. So he says, look, it's not even worth repetition. It's shameful to even speak of it. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. So he now gives this commission to us to be believers that are willing to press in on issues so that there can be an element of light and an element of exposure. And so let me say some things about this. I think oftentimes, understand, go back to your pericope. In the beginning of chapter 5, my Bible says walk in love. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. All of this that we're talking about is in the context of how we love each other. Let me tell you why this matters. Because when push comes to shove, we all have these two deep-seated desires. One deep-seated desire is to be known and to know people. The other deep-seated desire is to love and be loved. This is why, if you're listening and you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, let me give you a super easy one why you need one. He is the only one that knows everything about you and still chooses to love you. He is the only one. There is nobody else in our lives that know everything about us. Nobody. So deep down inside, and I'm not saying the marriages and the children and the grandchildren, I'm not saying they aren't wonderful and special. This is what I'm saying. They're all based on an element of secrecy. There is something you don't know. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, there's something you don't know. And listen, there's some stuff I don't want y'all knowing about me because I still want a church. And then you say, well, Pastor, if it's that bad, why you pastoring? You take that up with God because he knew. So we have to, so this is what Paul is saying is the motivation for this. He's saying, listen, this is how you walk in love. You walk in love by exposure. Man, do you know the relief in knowing you know and it don't matter? Do you know the relief in that? I mean, like, you know where I'm messy, and you're like, but I still love you. I got you. So this is why he's saying this is important. He's saying, do you know people are in the church, and deep down inside, they're like, I know you say you love me, but you don't really love me because I don't trust you enough with this. Wow. You don't really know me. So I want y'all to get this. This is not being mean and malicious and judgmental about people's issues. That's not the motivation of Paul. The motivation here is how we walk in love. That's the motivation. He's saying the reason I want this level of exposure amongst believers is because I want y'all to love each other the way you see I love you. God loves you in Jesus. It is full exposure. It's like, hey, this is my stuff. You know, that's man. So he's saying that's the commission that's been placed upon us as believers as it relates to our character. These are the standards by which we ought to be living. You know, I was reading I think it was Barna, I'm not exactly sure now, but they did a study of 1,000 people who dropped out of church. And they were just asking them, why you drop out of church? What's the deal with that? And almost something like 85, 90% of them were like, well, I just didn't really think anybody really cared about me. I didn't think anybody really saw me. I didn't think anybody really knew me. I sang in the choir with them, but nobody knew I was depressed. I showed up and I did my ministry, but no one knew that for the last 3 years, my husband and I slept in different beds. Nobody really knew any of that. And I just want to be in a place where there's really love. Let me say this to all of us. Man, church has to be a safe place. for people to work through their messiness and their stuff and their humanity. And that's what he's saying, right? So the number one area I need to reflect on in terms of my conduct, number one, in chapter 5, the standard of which my life is based on. That's the first thing he says. Now, he says a second thing. The second issue is at verse 15. In verse 15, he says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Let me stop right there. We talked about our standard as we reflect on our conduct. Number 2, I want to talk about our stability, right? Because what he's saying is, I want you to be consistent. You know, I'm going to tell you what wears us out. And it's not just me, it wears all of us out. When folk just can't land. You know, like, it just land. But it's exhausting that you with me today and not. It's just wearing me out, right? So just land. I can handle. I really can handle. Be stable. Right, be stable. So he says, he begins by talking in 3 areas of stability. He says, first of all, my first area of stability is my walk. It's circumspectly, he's saying. He's saying, look at verse 15. He's saying, look carefully then how you walk. Carefully, circumspectly. Let me give you the language of the text. He's saying, think about it like this. Think about you're barefooted and there's glass all over the floor, but you have to get from point A to point B. You're not going to just step down. He's saying you're just going to be very careful every time you step down. He's saying this is how Christians should be thinking, that I should not just, people, we can be so convincing in our humanity and just wrong spiritually, right? So people be like, well, that's just the way I am. I just show up and I just step down. I just say what I feel. What happened about walking circumspect? The Bible says, yeah, you are naturally wired to just say what you want to say, but you ought to be careful where you stepping. That's what he's saying. He's like, yeah, you have the ability to step down and cut yourself all up. But why? He's saying walk circumspectly, walk correctly, he says. So let me say a few things about this. So it's really this issue of walking in wisdom. So let me just talk about this for a moment, because we don't talk a lot. No, we don't talk enough about wisdom. Wisdom is my ability to take the facts and to put those facts into action when I need to. It is the ability it's an attribute of God where I'm looking for the best possible results with the resources I have. So I think too often times we just don't walk in wisdom. I can say whatever I want, but is that wise? Right? I can. It's a whole bunch of stuff we can do, but should we do it? I don't, and I'm not trying to, in no regard, talk bad about anybody, right? I'll just be very truthful, right? I drive 2021? So I drive an 8-year-old truck, and I'm a driver till the wheels fall off. Now, I just want to try to help this thing live for y'all. Not because I can't afford a new truck, but how wise is it to pastor people, many of whom may not be able to afford a new one, and then I'm not walking in, can I buy one? Yeah, but is it wise? We have to ask ourselves, is it wise? I see people, man, that, I see pastors, you can fly in first class, but is it wise? Or if you do, is it wise to put it on Instagram? At some point we have to ask ourselves, am I walking in wisdom? Right? It's just so let me just kind of walk through some of this for a minute. about this stability. What causes me not to walk correctly? What causes me to make bad decisions? What causes me to not be circumspect? I think sometimes it's just a lack of understanding. I'm struggling with I'm struggling with these, I guess as you get older, you hear this stuff and you're like, I thought that was right, but I don't really know that's right. So let me give you a great example. I have probably said so many times, experience is the best teacher. I think experience might be the worst teacher. I mean, as I really start thinking about that thing, as I really, really start thinking, wouldn't it be better just for me to make a good decision? So it sounds so right. You know, experience is the best teacher. No, experience can have you in bankruptcy. You know, it can have you in divorce court. It can have you, the reason I know not to cheat on my husband is because I did and I wound up divorced. Experience is the best teacher. No, walking circumspectly in wisdom would have been the better teacher. So, you know, for my younger people, I mean, let's try to get a little bit more of an understanding before we make decisions. Let me say jot down these three points real quick. And this is just, not in your notes, but this is just me, you know, ministering out loud in my own heart. When I've made bad decisions, when I didn't walk correctly, when I didn't walk circumspectly, it was usually around 3 areas. One was around my priorities. You know, it was just not having them in correct order. You know, I don't care what you say. You know, you're on a college campus, for my students on campus right now, the priority is not dating. The priority is getting an education, getting a degree, right? So I mess up when my priorities are not just like, why am I really here? What is the whole purpose of this? The second reason I don't walk circumspectly is because of pain. It's because I'm responding to a hurt. All of us have heard hurting people hurt, right? Hurting people make choices that are often not walking in wisdom because we're responding and we're trying to find some relief, right? So learning to process my pain in a way that doesn't bring more pain is so key. I can't tell you how many times what I did to feel better about what was wrong was worse than what was making me feel bad to begin with. So this is how Christians operate. This is this issue of our stability, right? My stability in walking in wisdom, walking circumspectly, is learning how to process my priorities, my pain. And then the third reason is my pleasures. I run up the credit card because I just want to go on a vacation. Because I just want to feel good. I want to have some pleasures, right? And so I'm spending a little time on this because I think it's where we don't talk enough about. When he says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, it gives me interpretive license to talk about wisdom walking, right? Because he's saying walk with wisdom. So let me tell you why this matters. It matters because we all are going to have to live with the choices we make. Now, I know that sounds super simple, but listen, I'm so glad they had the purposes here doing counseling, because I don't have, even though my master's is in counseling, I just don't have the temperament for it. So you have to really know you, because, you all been out of shape with who you married, but you chose that, right? I'm stuck with this choice. And so we have to recognize that I need to walk in wisdom because everything is not returnable. I mean, that dress don't fit, you can send it back, right? Everything is not returnable in life. I'm stuck with this thing. And so I've got to operate in wisdom because I'm stuck with this decision. But I also need to operate and walk in wisdom because my choices affect other people. Yes. And I think it's really, me running up my credit card affects whether or not I'm gonna have money to pay the tuition for college. Yes, right. My child didn't run up the credit card, right, but my choices impact them. Yes. Are y'all hearing me out there? Because I don't know if they're hearing me in here. So we have to recognize that, see, all this thing about it's my life, it's my decision, don't nobody else get to tell me, that's not Bible. We are one body. Yes. You know, whoever says whatever I put in my mouth is not my heart business. No, if you put a bunch of pork in your mouth, it's your head's business. It's going to impact them, right? Because the things we do impact other people. And so we have to recognize that, where we find ourselves, the places we frequent, I'll never forget, and I don't even know, I'm going to have to do a better job of telling stories about the 16-year journey because many people are new. Lots of people in the studio are new, don't really know our journey, right? So we have to do a better job of reminding people and laughing about it and kind of sharing. But there used to be, what was the name of that darn club on Harbor West? It was a club, it was a nightclub. And the name, I usually am able to call it right out, but the name is escaping me now. What was it? Blue Moon, I think it was. Blue Moon? Okay. So it's always somebody. It's somebody that just typed in Blue Moon. Ain't gonna be no shame to that. That's cool. So our church is I don't know, a year and a half old. We attracting everybody. And it was a greeter. And, they at the club and they got a drink and some reefer, and they take the picture. And then the picture wound up in whatever this publication is. So then they bring me the publication. The person who's at the door greeting on Saturday night, smoking weed with a picture hey. Now, I'm not here to judge people in the stuff they're dealing with, but that person doesn't just see a nightclubber, they see the greeter, right? So then your decision to do that impacts us. So we have to recognize that the reason I need to walk correctly is because it impacts other people. I'm stuck with the choices. It affects the lives of others. And to the same point, it affects my witness, right? And then I'll say a last thing about this. I'm going to try to move on. I think that when we develop a track record for making wise choices, then God starts trusting us with kingdom resources. Yeah, that's good. I think God starts saying, you know what, I got you. I can do this for you. I can trust you. I tell pastors this all the time. I'm like, why would God send a new member to a church that they were going to be abused at? Wow. Why would he do that? Right? So when we show God that we can be trusted, it's like a parent. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to let you take the car, be back by 10. If you smart, young people, your pastor's about to hook you up. If you smart, you get in about 9:30, 9:45. Exceed expectation. Yes. Right? And then your parents are like, okay. And you put some gas in it? Okay. Now when you come back with, can I stay? I don't usually ask this, but can I stay till 11? It's like, you know what? You've shown yourself trustworthy. I'm aging myself, Max. When I would hang out, I would go up the steps, and my mama or my daddy would say, come here and let me smell you. It's the first thing they would say, let me smell you. They want to make sure you weren't doing nothing you ain't had no business doing, right? They want to make sure you could be trusted. And we live in a whole different culture now. Now we live in a culture where child come in, parents snoring. You don't know when they came in, what they smelling like, who they've been hanging out with. We have to develop a track record of being able to be trusted so that God can then trust us with resources. All right, I'm almost there. I'm gonna move on in a second. I would be remiss, and I'm still in this statement, for those who are just logging in, we're still in the statement about how we walk, verse number 15. We're still in the statement. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise. So real quick, let me tell you how we do that. Number one, what does the Word of God say about a decision that I'm gonna make? It's not in your notes, I'm just kind of sharing some stuff that I wrote down. So I'm about to make a decision. What does God's Word say? At the end of the day, I need to say that, okay, God, what does your Word say about this? Yeah. Secondly, and these are connected, what's the Spirit of God saying to me about it? Because there's lots of stuff that's in the Word that the Lord is not giving me permission to deal with. Right? There's a lot of stuff, it's a lot of things that is in there, but it's just, okay, God, you ain't said anything to me, right? So what's the Spirit of God saying to me in this decision? Number three, ask them myself, what are the short-term effects of this decision? Does this mean that, I'll never forget when I left corporate America and I started pastoring, I recognized that one of the short-term effects of this, because I took a huge pay cut, one of the short-term effects, and it might have been even long-term, was I wasn't gonna be able to vacation for a while because we ain't had the money. So I think sometimes we get in trouble because we don't recognize that when I make the decision, there's gonna be a short-term implication. And I think people don't realize that. They don't realize, okay, you're deciding to do this, you're deciding to go back to school. Well, that money that you're gonna need for tuition, that means you can't be hanging out with your friends like you used to. So I think sometimes we want it all. We want the decisions, but we don't want any implications. What are the short term? And then equally, what are the long term, right? Because what does this mean long term for me? I'm 16 years in here at Word Tabernacle, 21 years in pastoral ministry. So an example for me is, one of the long-term implications of saying yes to the call is that you work weekends for 21 years. Like it or not, that's the job. I need to be at work on Sundays, right? There's no way to get around that. The long-term implication is I don't hang out late on Saturdays. We were having this conversation about the number one reason, I don't do wedding receptions, because they're generally on Saturday nights. The long-term implication, and I think oftentimes we want to be fresh in the pulpit, we want to have a great word, but we want to live like people who don't have the responsibility of Sunday morning. And that's in all of our areas. We cannot function. When you decide to get married, there's a long-term implication of that. There's a short-term implication of that. When you have children, hello somebody, I wish I had somebody testifying out there watching and listening. Having a child is at a minimum of a 21-year commitment. And really it's lifetime. It's lifetime. This is not just, let's just have sex one time. This 20-something years. This is massive amounts of money. It's a long-term implication. So can I say that to my unmarried, single people, that I can keep you from not getting pregnant? Let's think about look at your pastor, think about the long-term implication. If you barely have the money now to buy her dress. Think about long-term implication, diapers, formula, schooling, clothes, long-term implication. So when we're making decisions, we've got to ask ourselves, man, what's the short and long-term implication? What's the Spirit of God saying to me about this? What is the Word saying to me about this? What sacrifice is going to be required of me to be successful? Because I think this is an area where we don't often talk about. When God is speaking, when I'm in the midst of making a choice, a decision, there are sacrifices attached. And I think, can I say this, y'all? I think if we're not careful, we can become people that are more impressed with decisions than we are with commitments. And this is just James Gale you're talking. Like, I'm not that, when a young person says to me, you know, I'm grateful for like Kyle and Heather and all the people that work with our young people. All of that, I'm on my way to Spelman, I'm on my way to UNC, I'm on my way to ECU. Okay. I'm just not that impressed with the decision. I'm impressed with the graduation. I want you to recognize that there's a sacrifice required of you when you get there in order to be successful in the decision. And so asking myself, what are the sacrifices required of me in order to make this wise decision? And then who's going to be impacted? Who's going to be affected? I'm just teaching on being wise and not unwise. Who's going to be impacted? Who's going to be affected if I do this? And then the most important perhaps is it going to glorify God? God, are you going to get glorified in this? My standard and my stability, first of all, is identified in my walking correctly. Is that making sense? Somebody say it's making sense. Now, look at verse 16. Because it's not just in my walking correctly. The other thing that it's in verse 16 is he says, making the best use of time because the days are evil. Walking correctly, letter B now, is I need to witness constantly. Now, it's easy for us to miss how this is identified in verse 16. Because what he's doing is we think about witnessing. We think about our talking. He identifies something totally different as my witness. He identifies the way I manage my resources is a statement about my witness. Now, this blows my mind because we don't oftentimes think about this. Making the best use of the time, being a good steward, right? Disciples are good stewards, right? The evidence of my witness of Christ is not just me talking, but it's also the actions that I do, right? So let me give you 3 or 4 of these real quick. And I want us to now grow up to a different place in terms of looking at our witness. Because he said, making the best use of time. Days are evil. Number 1, I gave you the first one. It's not in your notes. But the way I manage my resources is a witness. How many of us know that God owns everything? Right? Now, then if we know God owns everything, then we also know we have been entrusted as stewards of it. The way I care for it, the way I steward my life is a statement of my witness of understanding that God is the owner. Because if I understand that God is the owner, I don't want to mistreat his stuff. Like, why would I tear up his stuff? You know, you have no idea how many times in a day I'm turning off a light switch. It's unbelievable. Or like we're about to you know, first of all, we need to do it for the environment anyway. We're about to go to this non-plastic bottle water stuff. But one of the big reasons beyond the environment, because I'm not like no crazy environmentalist like some people are, right? I'm not a tree hugger, let me say it like that. But I can't tell you how many times we throw out a bottle of water half full. Now, some of that's because I didn't buy it, right? It says a lot about my witness on how I steward resources. He's saying we ought walk in such a way that we are redeeming the time, that we are making the best use of time. It's really a statement about making the best, stewarding every resource. This might be my last Bible study, right? This could be our last day on earth. So I don't want to get out here as if, I don't need to be good this week. I don't have to study hard this week because I have next week. I need to make the best use of this day. I need to make the best use of this time. right? So let me share these real fast, and this will probably be as far as I get for Bible study today. So come on back with the sheet next week, and I'll try and finish it. Because I still have one more big category to give you. So I witness constantly. That's the point. Because I'm not always talking constantly. So that means that my life has to witness by how I live, right? So number one, I'm witnessing constantly by how I manage my resources. But number two, I'm witnessing constantly by how I handle my responsibilities. I'm never not pastor of Word Tabernacle Church. I have to be careful how I handle this responsibility, because the way I handle this responsibility is a statement about my constant witness. So, you don't get to just be a defunct father on the weekends. Like, I need to consistently handle my responsibility. So, managing of my resources and handling my responsibilities. Third one. How I handle rewards. Do you know how to be a gracious winner? Do I know how to handle resources and rewards that God has blessed me with? Somebody asked me, I've been getting this question a lot lately, Pastor, how does it feel to literally walk into the sanctuary, the Center for Performing Arts and Worship, and seeing your vision, the vision God, how does it feel to walk in that space? And my initial statement 100% of the time is, to be honest with you, the best part of it for me is seeing the people rewarded for their faithfulness. I can't tell you how many people got just dogged by people when they joined this church, particularly in the beginning. We wouldn't last. You don't know him. He's going back to Philadelphia. And people were they were on outs with their own family in some situations. But they kept giving, they kept serving. Or they came from churches where they had a building fund going on for 20 years and never built anything. Or, the pastor took the money and bought himself something nice. So they were dealing with all this, and now, 16 years later, their faithfulness is right, and they get to walk. When we come back Sunday, we're not walking through James Gaillard's vision. We are walking into the faithfulness of the people. That's what this is. People get to walk. They get to sit in a seat because they were faithful. They get to listen to music because they were faithful, right? So we witness constantly by how we handle rewards and blessings, of recognizing, man, that God, you are the one who has allowed for this. And we can't ever begin to believe our own press and our own ink. I tell people all the time, I don't deserve to pastor one person. And that's true for every pastor. Whether you have 10 members or 10,000 members, you don't deserve one. And we have to recognize, so it's how we handle resources. And then let me get the last one, rewards. The last way I constantly witness, you should have 3 words now. The first was resources, the second was responsibility, third was rewards. The last way that I witness constantly is by how I handle resistance. I think sometimes we destroy our witness because we are cursing our way through stuff. Because we are so bent out of shape about what we're dealing with. And we don't recognize that, I've got this weight on me, God, but I'm trusting you with it. I've got this heaviness on me, but I'm still holding on to my faith, that I'm still believing you are able to do. Paul says to the church at Ephesus really clearly in verse 16, he says, make the best use of time. Be a good resource. Be a constant, let your life witness for you. Make the best use of it, because guess what he says? Because the days are evil. And then let me give you the last point, because I want to start with Roman numeral 4 next week. So I need to walk carefully. I need to walk correctly. I need to witness constantly. And number 3, I need to will consciously. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. I need to be aware of God's will. This is hard. Because I'm like, God, there's some stuff I want that you just don't want for me. And I have to always, on a regular basis, ask myself, God, but what's your will? So for some of you that I'm talking to, you had your mind made up about what you were going to do. I need to ask myself, God, what do you want? Because sometimes God wants you staying when you want to leave. Sometimes God wants you leaving when you want to stay. So we have to, he says, the way Christians operate, the way they reflect on their own conduct, is that they ask themselves, what is God's will? What is God's will? And to the best of our ability then to operate in that will. You know what I'll do? I wasn't going to do this, but next week when we come back, I'm going to start off, instead of starting off in Roman number 4, how about if we spend the first few minutes talking about how we really ascertain and understand God's will. That can be hard. So we'll start there next week. I hope this has been a blessing. I hope it's making sense as we're talking about these reflections in our conduct. Let me pray for us, and hope everyone has an amazing, amazing week.
Thanks for listening to Orthos. I hope you enjoyed today's Bible study. If you've got questions or comments or feedback, I'd love for you to share it with me. You can email me at james@jamesgaillard.com. I would also encourage you to follow me on one of my social media outlets. Go ahead and subscribe, either at Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. Again, thanks for listening. See you next week.